Thanks, Stevie. Hi, folks. Welcome along to this evening's panel. We've got two panels this evening. Between now and 6 o'clock, we will be talking to Dina, Jennifer, and Juliet about publishing, the wonderful world of publishing. And you'll be a lot wiser about what publishing involves by the time they finish at 6 o'clock. And then at 6 o'clock, we'll be joined by Sheila Stewart from Fingal County Council's Arts Office. And thanks to Fingal County Council's Arts Office that we're holding tonight's session. Just to recap on what we're doing here with the First Music Contact Regional Development Project, we're basically talking to musicians about what they want from their local arts offices. Over the last, since we started this in late 2021, we've kind of like done a tour of the country, really. I think we've got like 17 local authorities under our belts right now, and a few more to go between the now and the end of the year. And what we're doing is we're putting on professional development panels like this one, and we're finding out from musicians basically as well what else they want, what are they looking for, And it's interesting, kind of when we're talking to Sheila later on, I'll go through this at greater length about what we found so far from this exercise. So what we're going to do right now is introduce our three panelists, and I will basically get them talking. If you have any questions during the course of this discussion, we'll be talking for about 40 minutes or so. If you've got any questions regarding publishing or regarding anything you hear, just pop them in the chat field, and we'll get to them at the very end. So I'm going to ask Dina first of all to say hello and tell us a little bit about herself. Dina, the floor is yours.
Okay, I'm Dina Coughlin. I am a publisher. I have a publishing company, Tremolo Music Publishing, and we have been around since about 2016. We have a roster of all Irish songwriters. And I also work as a music supervisor. That's kind of where I started in the States, and I still continue to do that here. So I work on a lot of Irish productions, film and TV.
Okay, give us an indication then, Dina, of some of the acts you work with or currently work with.
For publishing, some of the acts that we work with are Katie Kim, Winter Aid, Landless, James Darkin, um, No Monster Club,
Right.
Diffley. It's a very diverse catalog of music and writers.
Okay. In terms of music supervision, then some of the shows you've worked on.
The Young Offenders, we're on the new season right now. The Gone. We have a series mixtape which just premiered. It's a Irish-Australian co-production that it's really great. It takes place in the 80s and then kind of back into 2015, and it's going to be airing on BBC this summer and RTE.
Excellent stuff. Well, listen, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Sure.
Jennifer, how are you? Please say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, hello. My name is Jennifer Reeve, and I work for a company called Neophonic. I'm an independent music supervisor as well as a music consultant or music studio executive for HBO, if you will. And the show that I'm working on at the moment is Night Agent for Netflix, and then a variety of stuff as a music consultant for HBO.
Okay. How did you get into it in the first place?
In the music supervision?
Yeah.
Um, Long story, but basically had one of those moments in my previous career in advertising where someone invited me to a 30-second, they were recording 30 seconds of music for a Whirlpool spot about a dishwasher or something. And we were in the studio for 4 hours, and it was the best day of my life. I'd never been in a studio before, and I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Excellent stuff. Well, listen, we really, really appreciate you giving up your time to join us this evening again. So thank you very much, Jennifer.
Happy to.
Juliet, hello. Do you want to give us
Hi.
the LinkedIn, your LinkedIn profile, please?
Uh, yeah, so my name is Julia Martin, and I run a company called Silver Stream Music. We've been going about 15 years, and I mainly work as a music supervisor. Worked on shows like Normal People, Conversations with Friends, The Tourist Season 2, Kin Season 2, and what am I currently working on? The Walsh Sisters, TV show for RT and the BBC, and a number of other things will be out later this year. I also represent a number of Irish-based composers, composers for film and TV, and I also provide music publishing services, mainly around sort of publishing scores for film and TV shows if there's not a publisher assigned. So I kind of collect royalties and oversee that for production companies and composers. That's it.
Excellent. Very, very, very CV. How did you get into this in the first place? What were you doing before you
I
did?
was in a label back in the 90s where you could, release a CD and make money. I was like, you come to that point in your mid 20s where someone says, I've got a job in it. Do you want to just kind of work on a record label? I'm like, okay. So I started on a label and then could kind of see that there was no one doing, services to film and TV really. And sort of got into the publishing side of things and then music supervision. I went into Element Pictures, which make a lot of TV shows and amazing films. And I just said, "Hi, I'll be your music supervisor." And so they said, "Okay." I was pretty lucky.
Which label did you start with, Juliet?
Oh, Hummingbird. I don't think you'd know it.
Oh yeah,
We released Sinead O'Connor, actually. That was probably the best known, Sean Nua, which was a
yeah.
kind of Irish music interpretation. And a lot of traditional Irish.
Okay,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah. But it was great. It was a great time it was a really great time to be making CDs.
Mm.
Yeah.
They still exist. They still exist.
I know,
I have all them
exactly.
here, well, behind me here.
Yeah.
Okay, so can we start basically with kind of like, I mean, let's start with who do we start with this one? Dina, let's have actually from all of you. You know, start with you, Dina. A definition of what publishing is. What exactly is publishing, and why should every single person on this call who's a musician or a composer know about publishing?
Well, I mean, it's the rights to your music, so it's so important, and what we do as publishers, I guess, is to try and exploit, and that word kind of makes people a bit frightened, but we try and do the best we can for the creatives and people who've written and the rights that they have inherent in their music, and we try to add value to that by being really efficient in collecting royalties for them, but also trying to get syncs for them so that they make more money from their art. That's really it in simple terms. Um,
Okay.
yeah, that's it.
That's a very good starting point. So let's
Yeah.
break this down then let's break this down then with the others with Dina. So Dina, in terms of kind of like me, what Juliet has talked about there, in terms of the royalties and in terms of the exploitation of royalties, maybe go through where a songwriter can get royalties from for their song.
Yeah, so it's really important as a songwriter with your publishing to make sure that your songs are registered with a society. So whether it be IMRO or PRS or, whatever society you want to register them with, it's important to make sure that you do register them because that's how you collect your royalties. You're not going to get anything if you don't register your songs. So the royalties that you can collect, if your song is being played on the radio, you're going to get a royalty from that. If your song is used in a TV show, you're going to get a royalty from that, from the cue sheet that the broadcaster is having to submit. You also get royalties for streaming, for digital downloads. You can get mechanical royalties if you register with MCPS. So the main thing is making sure that, first of all, your song is registered so you can just get those royalties.
Okay. So in terms basically kind of then Jennifer of kind of like I mean how the mistakes a songwriter might make or whatever. What are some of the common mistakes they might make? And also, is it essential for them to sign with a company in the first place, or can they do it? Can they be DIY when it comes to their publishing?
They can be DIY if they can figure out how to get everything registered. And I'd leave that to Dina and Juliet to answer better than I can because I've never had to register anyone for ASCAP or BMI. But mistakes is if I can't find you as a music supervisor, then I can't clear your song. And publishing always, unless it's a public domain song, which we wouldn't be speaking about in this case, but publishing always gets paid. So even if I create my own master for a TV show, I still have to pay the writers and the publisher for the use of the song. So it's making sure, the biggest mistake is if I can't find you, if I've heard your song somewhere on Spotify, but I just can't get in touch with you because I can't find you online or you're not registered, then I can't use the song.
Hmm. How often
So
does that happen? How often does that happen that you may come across something on a streaming service or even like this to a radio station and kind of go, I can't track down this song?
it's not being able to track it down. Thankfully, socials, in fact, people used to make fun of me for it. Now everybody does it, is I will find people on socials. I have found family members on social saying, do you happen are you related to so-and-so? To finally get to an indie artist, because I've worked on a couple of shows where we hardly had any money. And I just had to reach out to local bands that might have had something recorded that I listened to on YouTube or something to that effect and weren't registered. They didn't have a PRO, they didn't have a publisher, and just had to find them. So socials.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to my earlier question then to you, Juliet, and to you, Dina. Does it is it kind of like, I mean, would you be advising ACT to sign a publishing deal, or would you kind of say actually they can do it themselves? Which is the better option, and does it depend kind of what much money's on the table?
Well, obviously we're a publisher, so we can see the benefit that we bring to songwriters and creatives. But it's certainly like you may not be in the stage in your career that you want to bring on a publisher. You may just have a couple of songs and you may be comfortable. It's like I always say, it's kind of a service. You may be comfortable just registering the works yourselves. Imro are amazing. You could talk to the membership team there. They can help you through the process. You might be comfortable, if you're playing gigs, registering your set list and registering your gig list. And you may be happy enough doing that. But I would say, if you're getting exploitation outside of Ireland, or you're maybe a composer and you've written for TV shows and they're getting shown outside of Ireland, it definitely adds value, and we would spend time finding out where those TV shows have gone out, chasing that up. So there is a lot that a publisher can do, I think, to improve the royalties that you get. And to also to get syncs for you, we have contacts with a lot of people who place music and film and TV shows, and that's hard to do just as one person. Yeah. So I suppose that would be my thoughts on it. Dina, you may add more.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say similarly, like, I think, you have to think about what you would want out of a publisher. And,
Mm,
if it's the right time for you to, maybe start to have those conversations.
mm,
Um, it is, that on the publishing end of things, like, it's important to know, like, if there was a sync or you had radio play, like through, one of the BBC stations, like just making sure all those things are collected. And that's something that your publisher will do for you. They'll chase those things down to make sure that those royalties are collected.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think, it, you can certainly do it yourself. Like Juliet said, IMRO is great. They are really, they will help you through the process of, registering your songs. And, then essentially you are your own publisher. If you decide not to work with somebody, you represent the publishing yourself. But,
Mhm.
it's having a publisher work with you and put your songs forward on your behalf. They really have your back. If you do have any issues with your songs, they're there to help you through, and to help resolve those issues as well.
Okay, before I go back to the music supervision part of the conversation, in terms of publishers, then I'm right in thinking the smaller publishers these days, like the likes of Silverstream, like the likes of Tremolo, that you're an awful lot more active than publishers may have been kind of like, I mean, 20 years ago. You're out there kind of like, I mean, you're finding the money which is hidden behind someone's sofa in Sao Paulo. There's a royalties due there. You're kind of finding that there. You're liaising with people like, I mean, Jennifer and all the other kind of supervisors in your little black book. You're right. I get the feeling that kind of like smaller publishers, the advance may not be great, but basically the services you provide bring in an awful lot of, not just value, bring in an awful lot of money.
mm. Well, I suppose if you're small, like the writers that you represent are valuable to you, and so you're more inclined to you're just overseeing less, and you're more inclined to sort of be able to manage it and coordinate it yourself. And I guess you can just have a more direct relationship with the artist. That's not to say that major publishers aren't brilliant and they've got sync teams and A&R teams and royalty teams, and so they're doing their job too. It's not that they're bad or anything. I think you just get a more personal service maybe if you're an
Mhm.
independent publisher. And I would certainly be just picking people, who I'm going to work with is it's such a kind of individual thing, and Ireland is small and you really want to kind of have a good relationship. So whoever I'm going to start working with, I'm going to really work for them, and we're going to, I'm going to be sure that it's right, and we're going to work together. And those are the ones, the good ones that, you kind of, you get on well and you can see the longevity through. I mean, I tend to work more with composers and
Mhm.
publishing it that way, but there's still that same relationship. And I think that's maybe where we add value in a different way.
Dina, one of the acts you've worked with is kind of Shane Winterade, and like
Yeah.
that's an amazing story. So, do you want to talk a little bit about that if you can? And like, obviously, not giving away too many specifics, just kind of how that relationship began and how Shane has built this kind of like billion TikTok followers, billion TikTok plays, whatever it is. Kind of like, I
Yeah.
mean, from someone who's quite, he's quite shy and like he wouldn't be exactly kind of like jumping up and down the stage at a point every night a week.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's amazing. Like he just has really, his first EP that he put out has done phenomenally well. And he's released some material, a couple albums since then as well, which are equally as amazing. And we met him, one of our friends, Mark from Blue Stack Records. We had been in touch with him, and we were just talking about music, and we were talking about some of the acts on his label, and that was one that it was kind of early on when we first started, talking about the creating the publishing company, and that was one that we were like, wow, this is really amazing. So yeah, we started a conversation with him and started working with him, and he just organically, I think, the Wisp Sings, which is the song I think in particular we're talking about, it kind of took on a life of its own. It started getting on a lot of different playlists, and it just really it went pretty crazy, which was, just really amazing to see the progress of it. So yeah, I think it's just it's really an emotional song that is really beautiful, and I think it really kind of just hits people when they hear it. It's very, it's not very layered, or it doesn't have a lot going on, but it's just, I think, the simplicity of it and his vocals that are just so really kind of hit people. So
Okay.
yeah,
He,
it's
he
been
may
great.
he may be an act that not many people on this call actually probably heard before, and
Yeah.
I'm always kind of point to this. This is an example of somebody may not have heard who's done really really well. Do you want to just give us a rough ballpark of things he's done? I mean, like in terms of numbers of streams, has there been syncs? Has there been kind of like, I mean, has there been kind of
Yeah.
coverage coming in, stuff like that?
Yeah, so I think at the moment, at least on Spotify, he has over 200 million streams for the Wisp Sings. And yeah, he's gotten some amazing syncs through it. We had, I think about 2 years ago or so, the song was used as part of a Google ad called, oh gosh, Look to Speak, I think was the name of it. And again, it worked really well with the campaign because it was all about this technology that they created that people who can't speak, who have some kind of paralysis or any kind of, disabling issues that they can't communicate, they created this technology that will help them be able to communicate. So the song was used as part of that campaign, and it premiered during the Oscars. So for us, it was great to be part of that
Mm.
campaign as a whole, but just because of the message of it, but just also the fact that it was just such a high profile ad was pretty pretty great. And he's had, just a lot of syncs through different TV series as well for that song and for others. So yeah, it has helped to give him a little bit of a leg up with getting some visibility on that front.
Excellent. Okay, great. So let's turn into the kind of music supervision part of the job, and then back to you, Jennifer. Jennifer, talk us through your average day in terms of how you find music. Do you start in the morning with kind of like these are the list of the shows and directors I'm working with. This is what they're after. Let's go. Or is it kind of like a lot more looser than that?
I would a little bit looser than that because it depends on the show. So when I'm working on, as an example, so for Night Agent, the music on that show is very location based. They wanted to keep everything very much set in reality. So there's no montages or chase scenes where there's, a song playing over it. It's what room are we in, who is in that room, and who would have put on the music. And that's how it gets chosen, or at least that's how we figure out where we're going for. And then it'll be a variety of things, hanging out on Spotify, just going through songs to see what I like. If I have the scene, putting it up against pictures so that I can see how it's working with the dialogue, if there is any. And, sending out a quick blast to publishers. This was something that, was sort of covered a little bit earlier, is those relationships really matter. And you have your go-to people that you get comfortable working with. You know they're going to have good stuff and that they're going to send you what you've asked for based on the creative brief and not just barrage you with a bunch of songs. And it's just listening through an ungodly amount of music, which is fun, but it does take quite a lot of time to narrow something down to like 10 songs to send over to your showrunner to pick from. And then hopefully something gets cleared. And if not, you have to start all over again.
You casually said something there, and you said you hang out on Spotify. How many playlists do you follow? I mean, I'm just curious about what's your Spotify kind of like. I mean, your process is like.
Again, because it depends on the scene. So every time my Spotify thinks I'm psychotic because it has that algorithm, and every time I go and look for something, it locks in. And so then when I go look the next time, it, pulls a variety of stuff. And so as far as actually following somebody else's playlist, I don't really do that much. I have my own that I create. I think most music supervisors also have playlists of songs that they like that they have found, but currently don't have a place for. Because that's one of the hardest things is we get so much music on a daily basis from the record labels, the publishers, some artists direct, that we hear something that's fantastic and we absolutely love it, but we don't have a scene for it. I can't shoehorn it in just any place. It has to have the right scene. So I have playlists of stuff that I am just waiting to use because I absolutely love the song, but I haven't found the scene for it yet.
All right. I'm not remembering. I'm remembering as well. Last time we spoke, I remember there was a kind of a WTF moment when you were talking about the budgets for shows. You used to you did
I felt so horrible.
this is really bust everyone's bubble. Like I might like we used to work on the you did the music supervision for the Shield, for example. So and
Yeah.
that was a good few years ago. Have the budgets gone down, gone up since then? Since you work with Sean Ryan?
Well, the budgets, it's weird. Songs have gone up. I mean, again, and I'm speaking from a US industry perspective because we have to pay more for songs. Therefore, our budgets might not always, but be considered larger than what you might get on a show elsewhere. And so for us, the song rates have gone up exponentially. And especially since the strikes, I'm finding just, a couple summers ago, I'm constantly amazed and at how much things cost between a main title credit, an end title credit, and then the body of the song, or excuse me, a body of the show, that the fees have just gone exponentially. At least they have here. I don't know if you're feeling the same thing in Ireland, but so the budgets have definitely gone up, but because the song prices have gone up as well, I don't feel that it's really changing how many songs I can get into one particular episode because it's all raising together.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
So okay, back then to kind of like back then to this side of the Atlantic, and Juliet, when you're working with kind of Element Pictures have had a great run of late. I mean, they've had kind of Oscar noms, they've had Oscar wins.
I don't work on all the Oscar nominated movies, by the way.
So when you're approaching an act then about kind of like looking for a song for a upcoming kind of like whatever's on the kind of the Element slate, whatever's coming up, does the fact that it's Element, does that kind of like make the doors open quicker, or is it the case that it's still about the money?
No, it does make the doors open quicker, I think. Like, if they're usually working with really good talent that maybe has a really good track record. And, when I worked on Conversations with Friends, which came after Normal People, or even just Normal People, you kind of, when you send out a clearance request, you give a little bit of synopsis of the show and maybe the background of the director. And, if I'm going with Lenny Abrahamson, who is Oscar nominated, and, Element, I think at that point they'd been Oscar nominated for a film. And all of that is like, it's attractive for people to want to be involved in. And when I came onto Conversations with Friends, everybody was very eager to be involved on the back of Normal People. But it probably meant the cost was a bit higher. So yeah, like I do think, but I mean, it depends. Like when you're going to clear something, you're still going with your overall production budget. So they don't like if Element is working. I just did a great film with a director called Rangana Noyoni, and she'd done a BAFTA nominated film before, but so people wanted to be involved in it, but at the same time, the budget was not huge. So you're still going to the rights holder and going, look, this is even this though this is a wonderful like filmmaker and this is a great production company, we still only have X much, you know.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
on that film, she wanted only African. So you know, into to Jennifer's point, you know, that's where you sort of dive off into, you know, a whole other area. I sort of was like talking to labels and publishers, you know, who specialize in that music and, you know, playlists on Spotify and so African playlists. So yeah.
Okay, Dina,
Yeah.
from your point of view, like I mean, if you're pitching some of your artists at Tremolo to other music supervisors, you know, like I'm just curious, like how often do you get in touch with them? Is it basic? I'm just curious what the kind of like the reach out is in terms of networking. Are you contacting people on a weekly basis, monthly basis? Do you have a mailing list of kind of people you're sending? This is a new song from Shane Winterade. That may be suitable for kind of like you know chilly Nordic spy thrillers involving the lead actor falling in love with the local police detective. Is that how you're selling it, or how are you selling it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a combination. Like we're doing blasts when new releases come out, just so, supervisors have the material. It could be that we're getting briefs directly from supervisors saying, this is what I'm working on. I'm looking for a song for this scene. This is the vibe. These are some references. It's kind of a combination of that, just kind of hitting in a couple different ways. We also work with a sub-publisher that they pitch a lot of our material in other territories as well for us. So it's nice because we can do stuff ourselves and they can also reach out as well. So it's further, it's reaching out into territories. It could be Australia, it could be continental Europe, just places where, they have more relationships on the ground with those supervisors.
Okay, just you use the term there that some people on the call may not recognize as sub-publisher. What's
Yeah.
a sub-publisher?
So a sub-publisher is a publisher that you work with to represent your compositions. So they're collecting royalties. They can pitch for syncs. It's really they're kind of an extension of your services, just in other territories.
Oh, so they're like an agent for you in other territories where they may be stronger in those territories.
Exactly.
Okay,
Exactly.
great stuff. Thank you very much. Back to you, Jennifer. You know, in terms of kind of like the music supervision role, an awful lot of people we talk to on these professional development panels, when they come to knowing about a band, seeing a band, it's all about seeing the band live. I'm just curious, from your point of view, does it matter what the band sound like? Because all you're really after is a song, or really after kind of how the song will actually fit in with a scene.
In terms of how it sounds live, you mean, or
Yeah, or like I mean, are you is the like I'm just kind of curious from your point of view, does the live element have anything to do with why you'll go for a track?
uh I'm gonna say yes, not because of how it goes in the show, but if I've seen a band live and you just get more excited about the band and you hear the
Or
songs and because we all have that emotional attachment as well. So I can't say that it doesn't affect me because it does. If I've gone out and I've seen a band live and I just can't get past how great the show was, that's going to stay in my mind. And it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get a placement in a show, but it's definitely going to be, I'm going to keep going back to see if there's, something I can get to. But as far as the actual show itself goes, no, it doesn't matter. It's what does the recording sound like? And does the
okay,
recording fit in with what I've got going on? Unless I'm looking for a band to play on,
no.
to be basically a live band in a scene on set. That's a whole different story. But yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter.
But just in terms of, I suppose, another process story, a process question, and you hear something on the Spotify playlist today, and it really hits you, and you think, okay, this is really good. It's not working for what I'm working on at the moment. How do you catalog that? Are you an Excel woman, or do you have some other way of kind of cataloging the fact that the song "Crying Eyes" by the Jim Carroll Band is ideal for funeral scenes, for example?
I do not have an Excel spreadsheet, but I know a lot of music supervisors who do. I just have a lot of playlists, whether they're in Spotify or, I still have old stuff in Apple, believe it or not, but in iTunes. But it's just a sort of a memory thing of you have those certain songs that you just absolutely want to be able to play somewhere, or maybe it's just a song by a particular band that you're in love with that you want to get a placement somewhere. And I just have them cataloged, but
Mhm.
no particular spreadsheet.
Well, okay. Question back to you, Judith. You, and I suppose I know there's some people on the call. This question is probably pertinent to them. And you mentioned earlier on that you work with a lot of composers. When you're working with composers, looking to represent them, what are you looking for?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good question. Um, well, they need to have, I mean, I'm just going to respond to what they've written, really, whether be that to a short or so it's, do I respond to the work that they do? And then also sometimes I might be looking for maybe, they work more in the kind of synth-based scores, or maybe I don't have anybody that, or that's their strength. And I feel like maybe, it might be good to have somebody that I represent in that area. Um, they probably need to have a little bit of credits under their belt because it's hard for me to go out and I mean producers are quite risk adverse and they do like particularly with episodic television they do like to be able to see that a composer has experience because those deadlines are so hard and you really have to be able to knuckle down and meet mix dates and it's very intense and they sometimes like to see that a composer has been able to meet those deadlines in the past. So I have had composers that people have loved for a show, but because they haven't had episodic television experience, they haven't got the job. And you're going, look, they can't get the experience if you don't give it, it's a kind of chicken and egg. But I would then definitely I've sort of been able to kind of go, look, I'm here with support. There's music, I can bring in a music editor. There's, support from other composers, and you can look to sort of sell, I guess, that perceived shortfall, such as it is. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's about responding to their work, really.
Okay. We've been talking for about 35 minutes, so I kind of feel we've all got to know each other a little bit. So maybe it's time for the rude question of the day, and starting with you, Dina. Like the money that's involved here. I mean, how much, like what sort of kind of income are we talking about here for musicians from syncs in terms of what can be got from their publishing? And obviously it depends on whether the song is a hit or not. But maybe just give us a rough, but all three, give a rough ballpark of what you've seen are the kind of like the returns for songwriters from publishing in different categories and also from syncs as well.
Yeah, I mean, for publishing, it just all really depends. There's a lot of variables because if you're getting a lot of Spotify streams and those royalties are being collected globally, if you have a publisher that is collecting those, then you could make anywhere from a couple €100 to a few thousand. It just really depends on how active your song is on these different platforms. If it's being used a lot on TikTok, in different videos, stuff like that. For you have performance royalties that are collected if you're touring. So just making sure those are, if you're going over and touring the States or the UK or whatever, that those royalties are coming in. Yeah, a lot of it depends as far as the royalties go on the activity of your music.
Right. So the more active the band are, the more chances are that all these kind of there's dozens and dozens of revenue streams that are kind of working all the time. So if you're
Yeah,
touring, that side comes in. If you've suddenly kind of like gone viral on TikTok, there's money coming in there because that will then kind of like also respond into kind of like Spotify and Apple Music stuff. So really, you won't make money if you're doing nothing. But if
exactly.
you are doing
Yeah.
stuff, the revenues flows will start coming in. That be right, Julius?
Yeah, totally. If you're not doing anything, there's nothing to collect really, if there's no activity on a song. I mean, I can definitely speak to scores and, obviously it depends how much of the rights you hold on to. If you get your writer's share, which is 50%, or if you manage to hold on to the publishing, you get your other 50%, you're collecting 100. If a TV show kind of does quite well, the returns can really be quite good from, if it's, say it's just local only in a couple of territories, you might get a couple of thousand to, tens of twenties thousand, 10 to 20 thousands on a royalties. Yeah. Especially for
Okay.
sort of if it's really well syndicated across loads of territories.
Okay.
Yeah.
What would be the view then from the States on this, Jennifer? I mean, like, or is it a case of kind of like, I mean, if you're getting kind of like, I mean, placed on shows, placed on films, is it about more about profile than actual kind of financial profit?
Um, yes and no. I mean, the profile is definitely they've cracked the joke that as music supervisors we're A&R because we are getting artists out there who may have not have been heard before onto a show, and then suddenly everyone's going to Spotify and the streamers to find the music. And sometimes as a music supervisor, that can be one of the favorite parts of the job, is getting a song out there or a band out there that, maybe hadn't, been hitting very hard on Spotify. And then as soon as the night they go on the show, the next day, their Spotify number goes up, and et cetera. So profile is definitely part of it, but we're going to pay the price for the song no matter what. The profile, being able to say, well, this is going to happen for you, doesn't seem to do much for us to be able to get specific pricing or not. We're still going to have to pay for the song. And the song use itself, the sync license, which is in addition to the royalties you might get every single time the episode airs, but you're going to get that first sync fee that gets paid to the publisher or the record label for the use, is dependent on a bunch of variables of the scene itself, and how featured is the song will make a difference on how much the price is going to be in terms of putting it in the show.
Okay, like I mean, we've kind of like talked sort of back to front. So I want to reverse engineer and kind of give some of the people listening just some tips and ideas. But Jennifer, I just want to kind of get a kind of a music supervisor story from you. And like, is there any act that you've any act or any song that you kind of look back and when people ask you like, what do you do? How does it work for bands? You always kind of go, well, I'll give you this example.
And how it works.
Yeah,
For
how it's a positive for a new act.
Just exactly what I was saying before, is if, there's a band or a song that, I have found somewhere that seems obscure, and you get it onto a television show and suddenly it blows up the next day. You just see the streams go up. People are, hopefully talking about it. And, it goes from there that, maybe it's not that they've been discovered, obviously, because the record label or the publisher that they're with has already done that, but just that they're suddenly out to a much bigger audience.
Mm-hmm. Is there any example of that you kind of have got that you'd like to talk about?
Oh, I'm sure there
Sorry.
is, but off the top of my head, I'm sorry, I'm not prepared with the name
I
of a song
I can
that I
save
can
you there,
remember.
Jennifer, and I bored you with this story in the last one.
No, but please do.
Please just tell us again, because most everyone here hasn't heard it before. So tell us, Juliet.
That's true. That's true. So Anna Mika, I'm sure you know, is an amazing singer-songwriter from Wicklow, and so she closed out the episode 1 of Normal People. I have worked on other shows, I swear, and I another supervisor I worked with said, "Oh, a tip is to see how many streams they have the night before the show goes out." And then, so I remember taking a screenshot of that one, and then coming back over the next few months, but like a year later, she had like 20 million streams on that song, and I think the record deal that she got with Network afterwards was off the back of that. Well, it's not off the back of that, but the way that just
It
helps.
helps hugely.
That just helps. Of course, it's the art and her amazing songs, but yeah, so that's the good looks. And that was true of a lot of those. That was true of a lot of artists on that show.
Great.
They got it, the Shay, actually. I think I'm pronouncing that right. They just had a song and a scene in episode 6, and they've got a number of syncs for that song again. I don't know if that's on the back of that, but it does raise profiles, I guess, if you get the right show and the right sort of use.
At the right time.
Really
Okay.
help. Yeah, I'd definitely be looking at that. If you're being approached background of a bar, managing your expectations versus over a montage sequence of something nice and big, I definitely would say, even if the fee is not as much as you want, if you think this show's going to do really well, and I wouldn't turn it down, you know what I mean? If it's going to be a really big kind of upfront kind of use, that's valuable,
Okay.
on that.
Last question for me then, for all of you, before we get some questions in from the audience. And like what are okay, so give me some tips that you've kind of like applied time and time again to young bands when it comes to dealing with publishing and dealing with kind of like music sync and placement. Obviously, one is the one you all started off with earlier on was make sure the song is registered, and obviously in Ireland you're registering it with Inroad. There are other places, there are other organizations in other territories. So Dina, starting with you, is there any just one tip you have for the musicians on this call, songwriters on this call?
Well, I think if if you're in a band or if you're writing with other people, just making sure that you have agreed what your splits are. There's no, murky water on that, it's very definite that, maybe you have 75% and another person has 25%, and that's how it's registered.
Mm.
Okay. Thank you very much. Jennifer?
I was just gonna piggyback on the back of that is know what you own. That can be the hardest thing sometimes, especially when we're working with someone who's controlling their own publishing, and or rap songs are kind of notorious for it, that people have left the songwriting room, they haven't quite come to an agreement in that moment of what everybody has, and then a song ends up in a legal dispute because everyone's arguing over splits years after, and the songs just aren't licensable. So know what you own. And if possible, do your best to keep track of where everybody else is, because if we can't find 5% of a song, and writers aren't necessarily going to stay in touch forever, but just knowing who has what, so that if somebody calls you, maybe something wasn't registered properly or something to that effect, if you have an idea of who the other writers are and what their splits are as well, it's very helpful to us to try and figure that out.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Juliet, some advice.
I'd sort of say the same thing, often we're in a kind of a tight spot, or you're in a, there's a deadline, and it's really great to somebody who knows exactly what they have. It's a straightforward clearance and they're quick to deal with. And I do go back to sort of songwriters frequently who I've had really good experience with in the past, where they've owned both sides, they've the WAVs, everything's kind of quick, they know their rights, and so that experience makes me go back and want to work with them again. So I would say, yeah, and if it's been the opposite, if there's an unclear sample that they haven't mentioned till the last minute or whatever, then I'm less inclined to go back. So
Okay.
that's
Just
helpful.
just in terms of what you just said there, you said about the WAVs, and that just reminds me, like obviously you have the song registered, you know who's got the splits. In terms of the actual sort of like the physical side of things, or the physical side of things, the
I
actual
know.
music. What are you looking for? MP3s, WAVs? What
Uh,
exactly you
well,
need?
MP3s in the first instance, and then WAVs, when we get close to the mix, we want them high res files. So if they have that, it's great that they would have that quickly. And instrumentals.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, the same thing. If you can have an instrumental, they can save us in terms of trying to get a song underneath dialogue or something to that effect. It's wonderful when those are available.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's interesting. Make sure everyone's registered. Make sure you know where the other songwriter is, even if they've immigrated to Papua New Guinea, and then make sure you've got the WAVs. Make sure you've got the instrumental versions as well. Brilliant. Okay. So let's see if there's any questions in. There's loads of questions coming in now. So this is great. So first of all, Stevie has put in a load of links in there to all three panelists, and also to Imro as well. And the question is, this is a very good question from Francis. Hiya, Francis. And the question is, would you expect a songwriter to change the lyrics of a song to make it a better fit for your scene?
Who's answering that?
I was going to say no.
Okay, no, why not?
In terms of asking them to change the lyrics, obviously, I would assume the song has already been recorded, so that's not going to happen. What we have done as music supervisors is, if in our specific scene somebody is singing the song and maybe they want to have the character make a change to the lyrics to go along with whatever's happening in the scene, yes, we have done that, but we always have to ask permission. That is something that has to be written into the clearance and get it specifically approved to do so, and or sometimes singing the song in another language. We've had to do that before and get a translation approved. But as far as expecting someone to change, the song because it's already recorded, don't really expect that. But we might do it for a live performance.
I've done it
Excellent.
for an ad, like on a song that I've
Oh,
read.
yeah, good point.
Yes, and if they have quite a lot of money to offer you, and they ask you yeah, it's a conversation, if the artist is comfortable and it's worth their while and there's decent money involved. Yeah, but I wouldn't, if it was something small. I mean, it's up to the artist, obviously, but I wouldn't think it would be routine in any way to ask them to expect them to change their lyrics.
Right. Have you come across that like that, Tina?
I haven't. No, I mean, really, it's the lyrics are the lyrics. It's in most of the cases I've been, in, it's just really having the instrumentals so that, they can drop out certain things if they want to. They have a little bit more, flexibility to just work with the lyrics that are there and maybe using the instrumental instead of some of the lyrics.
Mm.
Okay, great. Very good question here from Abby Rafter, and it's about the video game industry. Are there opportunities in the video game industry? Is that something any of you have had experience of? I mean, like we know there are people in Ireland, musicians in Ireland, like Miracle of Sound, for example, who's based down in Cork, who's done really well out of video games and placing his songs on video games. Is that something any of you can speak to?
I can't really.
I think we need. I
I
think we
can
need.
say me either.
Stevie, take note. We need a completely different panel on video game industry. Perfect. That has no,
I
Yes.
believe it's
no.
quite small. I was at a panel and we were asked something like that. Sarah Glennan, well, that was in relation to composers. She represents composers. She said it wasn't yet. It was currently a small industry here in Ireland, but I don't know if
Yeah.
that's true. In terms of composers, I don't know.
We'll get on that. So, Abby, thank you very much for that question. Question here from Robert. He's currently studying music for film, TV, and video games and building up a portfolio of scores and live recordings. What's the best route for Robert to get discovered for a composer who isn't gigging or releasing songs for streaming? Is that a case of kind of hitting you up? Is that a case of kind of like, I mean, finding directors who maybe are going doing interesting stuff who haven't got big budgets? What's the
Yes,
story?
that's what I always say to people like go to the filmmaking colleges and find who's making short films and who needs a composer, and you not only build a relationship, but you build your craft as well. And you understand that you build experience in the process, and you hope that maybe if they make something, that they will then go on to make something else down the line.
Mm.
Um, because
Again, it's a bit like the answer you gave earlier on, Juliet. In some ways, it's a chicken and egg situation that like
yeah.
someone wants to make sure the person's got the discipline and has got the kind of like the wherewithal to work on an episodic TV show. But in
Yeah.
order to get that experience, you almost like need to go somewhere else first of all to get it.
Yeah, but exactly. But short films are a great way to start, I would say. And I would expect it's a long game. Like I certainly say, like it's a relationship game in Ireland and it takes a long time, but it can be a great career, but it just is slow. It just takes a long, long time. I would just say that. So yeah, that's my experience anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. Would you kind of concur with that, Jennifer? Do you know the similar momentum in terms of newbies getting discovered across in the States?
Absolutely. It's absolutely agree with the comment about it's the relationships because once you find your go-to people, like we have directors and showrunners where they've worked with the same composer on every single project that they've ever done. And it's just because they've been coming up, through the industry together, and or they just found, a director or a showrunner just found somebody that understands them, when they're trying to explain something visually and they've met somebody who can musically answer what it is they're trying to, ask for because it's two different language speaking visually versus audio. But yeah, the relationships are everything and it does take quite a long time. So the more projects you can get on to just build your resume, the better.
Okay. There's a question here. I'll start with you, Dean, on this one because it's very much a process question. Question from Deb, who's a singer, songwriter, and producer, and uses a lot of free loops to create her songs. Must it all be completely original, or are loops okay in terms of kind of the publishing side?
Yeah, I mean, I guess with the free loops, I don't know. That's a little, I would maybe be a little questionable on that. You just want to make sure that, you're not incorporating something that is an infringement of anybody's existing material. So, I think sometimes you can go to like sample packs and stuff like that are created specifically to be bought and licensed and you can use those as part of your material. But I don't know. I'd be a little, I don't know. For me, I'd be a little hesitant about using free material as part of a recording.
Okay. Jennifer or Juliet, anything to that?
I'd have to agree. We've had an issue licensing a song that came through. Somebody had used beats that they had gotten somewhere online and had thought they were free. And we had somebody who came out of the woodwork and said, hey, those are my beats. And all we could do was turn them back to the record label that we got the song from to say, you guys have a problem. You need to figure this out amongst yourself. And then if we need to fix the licensing, we can do so. But it's hearing, using free loops or free beats now makes me very nervous because I just have a feeling someone's got to come out of the woodwork and say, hey, that's mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the answer there for Deb. So thank you for that question. It's a very good question here from Owen, but the thing is, it's also a statement, and I think he answers his question with the statement. And basically, it's kind of like would you encourage independent artists to hold on to their publishing rights? And is it standard that the fee is split 50-50 between mastering rights owner and publishing rights owner? Then he gives an example that last year his band was offered an admin deal, not a record deal, with an independent UK label who would have absorbed the band's publishing rights as part of the deal. They didn't sign it, and soon afterwards they got a TV ad with a considerable fee and secured 100% of the fee for the band. It worked favorably in this case for them. But do you think you should ever hand over your publishing rights, or is it something of value you need to hold on to and make sure you exploit? I think it's something you hold on to, or something you make sure if you are handing it over, you're getting paid for it. Am I right thinking here, or am I being a bit of a communist?
I don't think you're being a communist. No, listen, I think you shouldn't be handing over 100% of your publishing rights to somebody, to a record label or whoever's asking. I mean, really, with a publishing agreement, if it's an admin agreement or whatever kind of agreement you might enter into, you have agreed splits with your publisher that they're, as part of their services to collect your royalties, to, put your music forward for syncs, etc. You agree to a set of splits with them that they're going to get a certain percentage of that, royalty income or sync fee, and you're going to retain the other part of it. All deals are different, but you should definitely, you should read through any kind of agreements, obviously, that they're sending through to you. You should talk to a lawyer to make sure that, they feel that this is okay for you to enter into. It's, publishers are, they're there to help you. They're there to help you collect as much money as you possibly can for your work. So, it is, if you find a publisher that you like, you're gonna have hopefully a good relationship with them, and you're gonna be able to work to, collect the money that you should be collecting. And they're going to be putting your music forward for things and trying to find opportunities for you. And, also outside of all this, like, they can find opportunities for you to, co-write with other people and just see, explore other areas that you might be interested in as a songwriter. So, I don't think it's necessarily that you have to hold on to your publishing. It's, because if you're holding on to it, there's nothing being done with it. Like, there's nobody actively out there really working it. That's what a publisher is doing for you.
I think one of the most important things you said there, Dina, and you said many important things in that 2-minute answer. But the most important thing I think I'd highlight would be get legal advice. You know what I mean? Like, any sort of contract anyone's kind of throwing at you, like, get legal advice. That seems to be the answer there. In terms of the more substantial answer, have you anything to add to that, Juliet?
No, I think Dina's captured it all, there's lots of different deals out there. So, I mean, if you're doing an admin deal, certainly like lifetime of copyright, or, I look at those key elements, like how long is the agreement for, and like, is this for, which it probably shouldn't be. But no, I would definitely echo that, and find someone. Don't just find any lawyer. Find like someone who really understands. You might even have to go to, I don't know, but you might even have to go to the UK. But there may be a few people here. But yeah, get the right advice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite important as well. What Julie just said as well, and I kind of plus one that don't be getting the lawyer who did the housing, your sister's kind
Yeah.
of house. Make sure it's someone who basically knows the music business. There are some in Ireland, but most of them are based in the main music centers, which are London, Nashville, New
Yeah.
York, Los Angeles. Last
Yeah.
question here, and it's a good question as well. And basically, I really really appreciate the time Dina and Juliet and Jennifer have given us tonight. And it's a question from Federica. Hi, Federica. And it's basically, as an independent artist, what's the best way to kind of present my music? I'm assuming they mean, what's the best way to present the music to you? Are you open to kind of cold mentions? Are you open, sorry, not, are you open to cold calls in terms of someone just emailing you their MP3? Is that a good way for someone to start as an independent artist?
Uh, I mean, email me a link to an MP3, I think, and then also like a Spotify link is nice if I just want to dip in. We do get a lot. I don't know about Dina and Jennifer, but I do get a lot. We get a lot, and so I don't always respond. But sometimes if I'm looking for something, if there's a reference artist that I'm looking for, if you've put that in your email, I might search in my email. That's something I do. Like I was looking for Sabrina Carpenter type of sound, and I just like put in Sabrina Carpenter, and then you kind of sometimes people will reference that, and that. So I don't know if that's a tip, but a streaming link and a disco link for me. Disco's my favorite. Yeah.
Great stuff. So would that be the same for you, Dina and Jennifer?
Yeah, no, I absolutely. If you can just send a link, send like a little short and sweet blurb about yourself, maybe, and just any kind of references, like if you're similar to Sabrina Carpenter or whomever else. Sometimes even if you put, you know, stuff about like what the themes are in your music, or, any kind of keywords like it's emotional or
Mhm.
romantic or whatever. Again, like I search through my emails for stuff. So when I'm doing, a search for songs, sometimes that's like, one of my go-tos. Just on the publishing side, I'd say like, just kind of you can send a link to your music and say a little bit about, who you are, why you think you'd be a good fit for, our catalog. Yeah, I mean, and again, we do get a lot of submissions as far as, on both companies, but as much as I can get through what I can, and if there's something I like, I'm gonna get in touch for sure.
Excellent stuff. Last word to you, Jennifer.
I do the exact same thing. So if you send me an email, one, if you're sending a link, make sure that it stays live because who knows when I'm going to be able to come back and listen to the track. The metadata or the mentions in the email of stuff that I can search for, keywords, like everyone else has said, is fantastic. And it doesn't hurt if you're wanting to pitch for a specific show and you know that it's one that I work on or whatnot, feel free to mention that in your email because then I know that you actually that you've done some research and you're pitching stuff based on the sound of the show or whatnot. But the main thing is to just keep sending, but don't, I would say, follow up with a, hey, I sent you on my playlist last week. Did you listen? Because we get a lot of those, and you start to feel this pressure of,
Yeah.
I don't, I get so much music, it's impossible to listen to everything. So just keep sending it out and wait to see what gets caught.
Excellent stuff, and we're bang on 6 o'clock. So big thanks to the three of you. Big again for kind of like all these wise words and great insights. So big thanks to Dina, to Jennifer, and to Juliet. We'll see you again. So hopefully everyone got a lot out of that. So see you again down the road.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.